Can you hear me talking?
I can.
Yay!
Yeah, I don't. Hey, sorry everybody. I don't know. I might as well move this. I had like this whole studio set up. I've never used this particular technical meme, but I'm on live every day. I just taught yesterday. So
no, I know you're like a pro. That's why I'm like, you and I are intelligent people. We can figure this out. We're gonna like tackle this but I was just telling people, I'm like, sometimes when we can't figure out a solution, what do? We try to fix it, and then we look at what are the other alternatives to get me to what I'm trying to do. Yes. And in this case, I mean, my goal is to get you live on screen. I mean, ideally from your laptop, because that's the best environment, but okay, let's try other ways to do this.
And actually, I was on my desktop, so I didn't even think about my laptop, but it doesn't matter. We're connected, so we're just going to do this.
We're just going to go with it, right?
Okay. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that.
No, we're all good. I mean, technology happens, and we got to just roll with it. You guys know now this is live. This is not overly produced. This is not like NBC Channel 4 or anything like that. This is like Brenda Meller Marketing. This is how we roll here. So I am delighted because my very special guest joining on today's Social Media Pie is Dr. Rita Fields. And Rita and I would normally be in the green room and chatting for a few minutes beforehand. So you guys are coming along with this whole journey with us here today. Rita, are you okay to go to 11 o'clock, or do you need to end a few minutes before 11 today?
No, I can do that.
Okay. And I normally kind of ask these questions before we come in, but since we couldn't do that, we're just going to go with it as we go along here today. So as we get started, first of all, I want to thank everyone who's already left a comment below, and just really appreciate you guys watching live with us today. If you haven't already left a comment, please leave us a comment below. Let us know where in the world you're watching from, or realistically, where in the household you're watching us from, because that's where we're all working these days. And while you guys do that, what I'd like to do, Rita, is I'm going to turn the floor over to you and just have you talk for a few minutes. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we'll join into the conversation.
Okay. Who I am and what I do. So, yeah, that's never an easy question for me. I do a lot of stuff. So I am a professional, and I
got a tip from Jeff. I'm going to interrupt you. He says to turn your phone volume up because it's very low right now. So if you could adjust your phone volume up a little bit. I'm sorry to interrupt you with that, but I want to make sure the guests can hear you.
That's fine.
There we go.
Is this better?
Is that better, Jeff? You'll have to let us know, and then I'll pop a comment back from him as we keep going. All right. You can keep going, Rita, okay. And then we'll see, because I can hear you. So I think, you guys, if you're having a difficulty hearing, maybe try turn your speaker up a little bit, and I'll adjust it in the playback a little bit later on too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do quite a few things. I'm a professor. I own a couple of businesses, and I've recently joined an organization and an initiative. I'm executive in residence at the Community Impact Good Morning Incubator. That's a partnership between Strategic Community Partners and the Mary Grove Conservancy. And I'm also Chief Talent and Strategy Officer at Lighthouse. So I do quite a few things, actually.
It's like, what's the expression? If you want something done, give it to a busy person. You're like the epitome of that, right?
Yes, but I'll say no in a minute. So the fact that I have a lot of stuff going on means that I'm really good at saying no. I actually just I had a friend tell me that last night that he'd never seen anybody who can set boundaries the way that I do. And because I need to, I got too much stuff going on. Be sitting up here listening to people waste my time. You see what I'm saying? And so, so I do a lot of stuff, a lot of philanthropic work. Also, good morning, everyone. And so I think that's probably the closest I can get to a full introduction of who I am and what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm really delighted to have this conversation with you, Rita, and I'm going to go fangirl on you right now, if you don't mind, because I am such a fan of Rita Fields. Like, you guys, I've been an admirer of Rita for, I don't even know, it's probably been like 10 years now. I feel like I've known you probably initially through the Walsh community, and I knew Rita. I started hearing about this Rita Fields when she was going through the doctoral program at Walsh, and the professors were like, oh my gosh, she's amazing, and people were just really talking you up. And then I think that was when I first heard about you. But then from there, I feel like I've just kind of stayed connected with you through the Walsh community, especially Dr. Lee Meadows and some of the other faculty, and then through some of the conferences and events he's done. And I remember one event in particular, I think it was NAAA HR, and you were doing a speech about, and I don't remember the title, but I remember it was about people in leadership positions and the egos and, you know, this psychological tendencies of these people. And it was at an interesting time in our nation, and I'll leave it at that. But I was like, I mean, Rita is like expressive when she presents as a keynote. If you guys are looking for a keynote, this is somebody you should definitely book, because she is amazing on the stage. And I mean, I learned so much. I laughed. I probably cried in some places. The things she was saying were true. But just an amazing person, an amazing all-around human being. And I'm really delighted to have you on today, Rita. So thank you for coming on the show with me.
Of course, thank you.
Yeah. Uh-oh, what happened? There we go. We're back. Can you hear me?
Because I was on my phone.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm like, no,
I immediately hit decline. I was like, oh no.
So I'm going to zoom in on us a little bit. You might have to do a little adjustment. I think your alignments, there we go.
Okay.
And I'll keep us in this tighter view for most of our conversation here today. Okay. So we're here today talking a bit about, and I'm trying to pull the topic up in the background, and I think I lost it. So let me just go back for a second. Educating people on non-linear career success. So let's get the conversation started. And I think you've got some personal and probably some career experiences to pull from on this topic, and then some thoughts to share with our audience here today.
Yeah. So when I thought about what it is that I thought would be salient to share, I thought that it would be interesting to explore that topic, because you don't really hear a lot of people talking about having a different type of professional life, right? People tend to either be in corporate or entrepreneurs, right? And normally the twain shall never meet, or very rarely do they meet. And so I have had a very in some ways, very traditional for the first, maybe 10 years of my life professionally, very typical, just worked and moved up and got promoted and all that other stuff. And then I decided to jump off that train. And I did that because I really, I just hated what I was doing. I mean, I got to a point in my life where I could do the work. I didn't really have to think a whole lot to do the work. Yeah. And I really loved connecting with people. And so that was the only thing that was holding me on the boat, so to speak, to keep myself from hurling myself into the deep. The fact that I was able to meaningfully connect with people. And so I tried to do that more and more. And then it got to the point where, this is interesting, but my perspective was that when the higher up you go in an organization, a few things happen. But one of the things that happens is that people treat you differently. They don't treat you because you're an executive. And so there's all that social stuff that goes into what happens with the power dynamic, and all that stuff is fairly well documented. And I wasn't feeling that. I didn't like being assumed So I think that one of the issues that I had was that there was some level of superimposed assumption that, people just didn't, it almost seemed as though it was I can't really describe it effectively, but I didn't like the assumption that people had that just because I had a certain leadership position that I would or would not be interested in varying elements of their life. And so I was, I never really had aspirations to be a senior executive, like never, honestly. I will, okay, so I'm getting a tip to put my phone on Do Not Disturb.
We're crowdsourcing solutions again, guys. And if you're joining us a few minutes late while Rita's trying to put her phone on Do Not Disturb, I just want to explain. We've had some hiccups with StreamYard this morning, and we're trying to figure out what the hiccups were. And I actually was in chat with StreamYard for a little bit, and tried to troubleshoot it. And then Rita and I kind of did a workaround, which was having her join from her phone. She was just explaining she's a very busy person, and her phone is like Grand Central Station. So when a phone call comes in, her screen for some reason is going out. So it happens. You guys just got to stay along with me here. So we're going to try it. All right, Rita.
Yeah. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So I'm trying to figure that out. Boy, I am really multitasking today.
Did you do something different last time it went black? Did you click on your screen or something on your phone? Did that help the issue, or?
No, I did the exact same thing.
Okay.
And so I don't know.
Oh, there you go. You're back. And she's back. We had our commercial break. Hopefully everybody got a refill on their coffee. I did so myself, and we're back here. So we keep rolling with it. You throw them at us, we're gonna bat them back at you guys. I mean, there's nothing. You're not gonna kick me out of StreamYard.
Yes. Okay. So I think it's really important to for me, it was really important to just do something that felt meaningful for me. I, won't go into the details of my personal life, but I had a very tumultuous life for pretty much the first half of my life. Mm-hmm. And I started to recognize that that a lot of my professional life was an output of things that were going on in my personal life. And so ultimately, I wasn't really doing something that I was particularly interested in. And I will say this, there is a distinction between things that you're good at and things you like. Mm-hmm. And so I learned that for myself, that there are a lot of things I do really well. There's some things I suck at 100%. Okay. So I'm certainly not good at everything. One of the things I suck at is directions. I am very spatially challenged. I almost would qualify for a blue space, I think. I'm seriously impaired in that way. But I found that I had jobs, and I'm good at fighting fires. I'm good at doing those types of things. And that's probably because of the way that, I'm used to crisis. So, I know how to respond in crisis. But that wasn't what I wanted to do. And so I made the very deliberate decision to ignore the fact that I was naturally good at something and had a level of stability from an income standpoint, and decided to ask myself, what is it that I wanted to do? And I will tell you, I was so disconnected from myself and just the ability to calm myself down that it took me 1.5 years to figure out what that was, which I'm always so embarrassed to say, but that was just my journey. I mean, you have to learn how to listen to yourself, and you have to learn how to carve out space. And so I eventually came up with the fact that I just wanted to read, to write, and to travel. And whatever I could do that allowed me to facilitate that in my life and take care of myself and not end up back on the streets was fine with me. And so I designed a life around those things. So that's when I really focused on teaching. I had done adjuncting before I quit corporate, but I went into it full time. I quit my corporate job. I had a 6-figure job. Mm-hmm. And I have friends who love me dearly who said, what the heck are you doing? You can't quit your 6-figure job. You're Black. This is Detroit. Lots of things, lots of warnings by people who truly loved me, admittedly. But what I also learned, I've learned so much over the last 7 years since I've made this big jump. One of the things that I've learned is that people can love you very deeply, but only be able to counsel you from their position of freedom. Mm-hmm. So the fact that I was quitting something that, most people try to get on the track and then keep going up the track, and that's just really weird. And so people were afraid for me. So even though what I was doing was absolutely not nurturing my mind and my heart and my soul, the advice that I got was to just keep doing it anyway. And so I had to choose for myself that it just wasn't worth it to me to stay in that box. And so I quit. Now, let me just tell you, I did not jump out of corporate and land onto a cloud in the sky.
Right.
There were, okay. That is not how it works. Now, I did plan. I had some money saved. I had planned for about a year. And what I did the year prior was I gave myself a 60% pay cut because I knew, and that was the pay cut. I went to become a full-time professor, and it was a 60% pay cut.
Wow.
Yeah, right, girl. Okay. So I was like, well, good Lord. So I gave myself a trial run, which is very smart, by the way. I would recommend that in general. Pretend that you got a 40% pay cut and hold yourself to it, and you'd be amazed at how much money you save and how much you notice that you waste. And so I did that for a year. So I was relatively stable. In terms of understanding, I cut out a lot of stuff, went wireless, gave up cable, stuff like that. Right. And then I realized, okay, 60% pay cut, I can survive, but at some point I might want to have puffs with lotion as opposed to just puffs, which I couldn't necessarily afford at that point. And so I started my consulting business, when I quit. Like literally I quit, and then that month I registered my business for HR consulting, and I started then. So I started consulting on the side, and I mean, 7 years later, let me tell you, I am quitting, listening to myself. And this is not for everyone. So if you're like, if this is your tribe, this is like your flavor, this is for you. There are lots of people that are happy that have one job. Okay. So I'm not telling everybody, quit all your jobs. Let's all get burning sticks. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't do that. But if for some reason you want to talk about or explore, or you're interested in doing something that's not just with that one thing, you can absolutely do that. And I will tell you, that decision to listen to myself and to turn, to literally get off that track and go onto an unpaved road was the best professional decision I've ever made.
Have you ever looked back and said, I wish I wouldn't have, I wish something, different? I mean, I hold no regrets at all from, my departure from corporate. And I don't think I've talked to one person who's a successful entrepreneur who's said, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I should have stayed in,
No, I have not. I have never.
Do you regret not leaving sooner, or was the timing really, in terms of what you did and when you did it, was it the right time for you?
I think it was the perfect time for me. I think if you leave too early, you don't have enough experience. I had seen just enough stuff to be able to write my own book on stuff and have to write under a pseudonym, that I was able to consult. And very rarely do people still to this day say something I either haven't heard before or have experienced before. So I needed to have that depth of experience. And I also needed to thoroughly examine what it was about it that was unattractive to me. Yeah. Right. So sometimes people become entrepreneurs because they're not working out well in corporate. Okay. Now, here's the problem with that. If you can't get along with people in corporate and you want to start your own business, chances are, since you're coming with you, you're going to have some problems in your business. So you want to make sure that if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's not so that you can escape people, unless you're going to start a business where you make like puppy toys. I mean, you're going to have to deal with people. So there is feedback that you can get during that corporate experience, that I got during that corporate experience, that allowed me to be even better positioned to go step out on my own.
Good point. And it's not an escape route, for everything. And it's not for everyone. It's what I'm hearing you saying as well. You have to want it, and you can't just like want it on a whim one day. You have to like want it every day. Like every day you wake up, because you're hustling every day. You're always chasing after that next piece of business. You're always proving the value, because you don't get that paycheck in your direct deposit every 2 weeks. It's not just there, right?
Yeah, that's true. And I will tell you something else that I did, that if you're thinking about doing it and you can possibly make it happen, would be awesome if you could. One of the things that I thought through very deliberately is, okay, I'm going to have my own consulting business. But hey, a girl needs benefits, right? And so I had a very, I took a low wage. Well, it was lower than what I had. For some people, it was a great wage, but it was a 60% pay cut. So that's pretty significant. But I was also able to get free tuition for my kids. So in my mind, I added how much that tuition was on top of my salary mentally, which made me feel better about doing it until he got his degree. And then I immediately quit. But
but you also, did you get benefits during that time as well?
I got benefits. And so that was the other thing. So for me, I could consult, and I literally was only thinking about paying my bills. Sometimes it's really hard when you're an entrepreneur and you go out on your own and you don't have a benefits parachute, I guess, to rely on. So I would look for, and I've always had benefits this entire time that I've been doing it, because I've been teaching. And so, as long as even though I'm technically full-time at Michigan, but I'm a lecturer, which allows me to do everything else, right? If I were full-time tenured, I could only teach. And so I'm like a little squirrel in that way, right? So when I'm investigating opportunities, I still need my autonomy. So if I can get that and then still get like benefits, then fabulous. We can make this work, right? And so if you can try to do that, that would be great. But that requires you having more than one job, right? Yeah. But I think that was very helpful for me, because it was literally a matter of paying my bills as opposed to having to figure out how to get my teeth cleaned or something like that.
Yeah. No, I think that's brilliant advice. And I just feel like you're just such an adaptable person in every situation you go in. And I love the fact that you say no to opportunities that aren't a good fit for you, but you also say yes to opportunities that maybe aren't an ideal fit, but you are factoring in other criteria. And I think that's a message that we all need to hear. Yeah. And it reminds me a little bit of that analogy of, I think it's like a biblical thing, but the guy's like in a house and it's raining and the house is flooding. And he says, God save me. And it keeps raining and he's on the second floor and he says, God save me. And a boat comes by and they're like, come on, jump in. And he's like, no, God will save me. And then third day he goes to the roof and he's like, God save me. And another person comes by with another boat and they're like, come on, let's get out of here. And he's like, no, God will save me. And then the next day he dies. He goes up to heaven because he's drowned. And he talks to God and he's like, God, what happened? And God's like, what do you think the boats were for? And in our life, I mean, and probably in your life too, Rita, boats come by and we may not know that is the solution, but it's a possibility and a path. And we need to be thinking about things. And back to this topic, in a nonlinear way, it's not always what we think it is. Sometimes it's alternatives paths to get to where we want to be, right?
Yes. And I also believe that once you decide that you're open to something, you start to notice things. It's sort of like when you buy a car and you never noticed that car on the road before, but now everywhere you look, you're like, oh, there's my car, right?
You wave at the people and you wave back.
Exactly. You're like honking, like pulling up, which is so dorky. Maybe I'm the only one who does that. But I'm like, hey, Mazda CX-5 fan, but whatever. They don't normally respond. But the point is that I think that once you recognize the fact that this is something else that I want to do, I want to position myself to be open to opportunities, then the opportunities manifest themselves. Because I will tell you, my first contracting assignment, I got the same month that I started teaching. And someone called me out the blue and said, hey, would you happen to be available? And my first assignment was like a dream. Because, when you first start, you don't know how much to charge. You don't really care. You just want a customer, right? And so I was willing to almost do anything for almost free, as long as they covered my expenses. And it was this amazing opportunity to go to 10 cities, all expenses paid, and they let me set my price. And it was not a cheap price, and they did it. Yeah. And so I remember flying back and forth, and I had to teach, but it was perfect, because if I had stayed in corporate, I would have gotten that call and I would have said no, because there's no way you can be in corporate and flying to 10 cities within a 2-month time frame. And so I have found that truly to be true, that once you start to open your mind to pay attention to what is around you, you start to notice that there's opportunities around you. There's not just this one rock, right? There's like whoa, there's some foliage there that's actually pretty cool. Maybe I should check that out, right?
Yeah,
And
that's
so
awesome.
I'm very, very grateful for that.
So in the beginning, it sounds like, I mean, for you, for your business, and I think you were overnight success because I'm like, she's awesome, she's booking clients, and like you're like, well, maybe not quite. You had some early wins, but at what point during your entrepreneurial consulting journey did you start saying no? Did you start to become more selective about what you were doing? Were you doing that in the beginning, or were you kind of taking on everything? You know, at what point did you start to say this is maybe not the best fit, or that price point is too low for the value I'm bringing? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have, you know what? This is going to sound really weird because I have heard the opposite for so long. I have never had a problem saying no. Just never. And once I quit corporate, that became like, I mean, it was almost like reinforced, right? Like Wolverine when he had the adamantium on his hands and he was just, like at any moment his claws can come out. I can say no. And so I was very deliberate. And this is why it's really important to pay attention to the best time for you to leave. I had been in HR all this time. And so I'd always seen the rates that consultants charge. And I would be thinking to myself, you got to be kidding me. You're paying this person that much? They don't even do any. First of all, they just said what I said. All they do is listen to what we say. And then they just give that back to you and charge you, $200 or $300 an hour. I mean, that is insane. So I knew intuitively not to undercharge. And I did some research and asked a couple people, and I still advise people to this day, like, hey, you're charging way too low. Stop it. Okay. Yeah. Because people will go to the path of the least resistance. And often people will pay you whatever you feel like you're worth. So I did say no. Now I have rates. I have established rates, and my rates increase every year. And if people don't like that, they can go somewhere else. So I mean, I have. Well,
that's a good point, and you should. I mean, have you adjusted your rates at all because of COVID, or are things staying exactly where they are? I mean, some people are bringing the rates down because things are now virtual versus in person. But are you keeping everything kind of where things are?
Yes, I am. But here's the thing. So I have what I call a corporate structure, which is a traditional rate. But if for some reason I either know the person, first of all, if you're my friend, it's free. I do a lot of free consulting for my real friends. So
your inner circle, right?
Yeah, like people I've known for a long time, right? Which is why I said yes to your invitation, Brenda.
Yeah, thank you.
But I also have rates for like nonprofits or like it's special work but I have the ability to do that because I have established rates that other entities pay normally. And I do that all the time with speaking engagements, or, I will just very respectfully say, I'm just not going to, I know how much time goes into that work. But I know people who are good. Okay. And they're at a different price point. So I refer as much as possible, very liberally, to people who are good. Who may be more open to considering it. Sometimes I don't even know their price point, but they may not be at my price point. So at least I will give you options. But my thought is that if you want to, I mean, it's very true that in many ways you get what you pay for. And often when we're working and we're trying to like build up our business, we undervalue ourselves. And so I'm always encouraging people, don't do that. Like you know how much you work, like because if you set that bar, and if your bar is extremely low and you're wondering why you can't sustain yourself on your business, that might be why, right? But that's like a whole other consulting arm that somebody should come up with, how to help people set prices and to be assertive and in the asking of set price. So I don't struggle in that. I just say no, because I got a million things going on. So it's not, so if I'm going to do it, I'm like really interested in it. And both of us have to mutually be interested in it. And if we're both not mutually that interested, then, I'm not the person.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I remember like early on in my career, I had one person, kind of challenge me on my prices. And and said, I can't believe you're charging X dollars per hour for training my team on a web-based solution. It was LinkedIn. And I actually said, and I was kind of surprised that the rate wasn't even that high. And I said, actually, I've booked 4 clients this month at that very same rate. I'm like, you get, and I kind of politely said this, but I'm like, you get what you pay for. Have you shopped around?
Yeah.
Have you found anybody else? And he's like, no, you're the only person I'm asking. And I'm like, well, there's not a lot of us that do what I do. It's a supply and demand thing. And I said, let me know if you change your mind. Have a great day. And it stung the whole weekend. I was like hearing him in my head. I can't believe you're charging me that much. I'm like, why am I doing this? I had 4 other clients book me. But it's a bit of a confidence. And I feel like I listen to you, Rita, and I feel more confident about myself. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to hold my value. I'm going to say no to the next phone call and
hold it. That's right.
Well, I feel like, I know you talked about a book that you had written under a different pen name earlier. Have you published any other business books under your name? Anything that people that are watching could buy? Because, I think like there's so much knowledge here, in this wonderful woman right here. Is there another book coming or?
Well, yeah, I haven't done any business books. I've been writing my autobiography for about a decade.
Wow.
Which is crazy, but it's very difficult. I've had a very tumultuous life. And when you're writing about it, it's obviously much more in depth than what, is available for public consumption. And it's been a very emotional journey. So I'm actually in the editing phases of that. So I'm fairly certain that I'm going to be able to finish editing this year. So I have to do that first. The only other thing I've written that I've allowed myself to even focus on writing was my dissertation.
Right.
I had to do that. But
what was your topic for your dissertation, Rita, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it was leadership development efforts in Detroit after the riot of 1967. Wow. And depending on your orientation, the word riot, I used the word riot deliberately, but I say that in my, but it was absolutely an insurrection, a rebellion, lots of things. But that's what my dissertation was on.
That sounds fascinating. And I imagine there's a copy of that. I know you probably have a couple copies at home, but there's probably a copy of that in the Walsh Library in Troy, isn't there? In the Walsh College Library. I think
there better be as much money as I paid them. Matter of fact, I'm about to go check.
You should, and you should take a picture of it and then post it on LinkedIn and tag me and said, Brenda asked me if there was a book, and here it is.
It better be somewhere.
That's awesome. Well, I see we're getting close to 11 o'clock here, and I want to be respectful of your time, Rita, because I know you're a very busy person. I did see one question that came in, and I want to try to get back to this. And this is a question from Daniel. What advice would you give, Rita, to a recent graduate trying to get into corporate, especially during this economic situation caused by the pandemic? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think whenever you're a recent graduate, I think that your easiest connection to a life to corporate is through your institution, because you're a relatively unknown entity because you don't have the work experience. And of course, how do you get experience if people won't give you an opportunity, right? But when you are a graduate, there's this little thing called the alumni office, and they're actually supposed to help you get jobs. I mean, like that is what they can do. A LinkedIn headshot for you. Like I'm looking at yours. Yours actually looks really good. They're supposed to be able to review your resume, and they tend to get tons of job opportunities. I mean, tons of them, right? And so I would go there, strike up a relationship with them. Don't just do it. Well, it's virtually. So, as much as you can, try to develop a relationship. That's what I would recommend as the best way. Other than that, you're going to have to rely on maybe interpersonal connections with people that you know who can vouch for you, because you're not quite a proven entity yet, and there's a pandemic. Admittedly, there's a bit more of a challenge there, but you can definitely still find a job. That's for sure.
Good point. And Daniel, for you too, I would recommend try to invite as many alumni from your institution to connect with you on LinkedIn. In your invitation, mention that you're both alumni of XYZ University, because a lot of alums, it pulls at their heartstring when they hear that. They're like, oh, it's a Walsh College alum, I went there. And they're more inclined to want to connect with you. And then in the follow-up, you can also say, hey, I'm looking for a job as a business analyst in Metro Detroit. Can you give me any advice? I like to go with that little soft kind of indirect ask with that. So
that's good.
Rita, I could keep talking to you forever. And I think we have to have you come back again sometime. I'm going to dangle a carrot in front of you. So when you get your autobiography published, let's plan on another interview at that time if you're interested, and I'd love to help promote your book and the work that you're doing. But in the meantime, as we start to wrap the conversation here today, Rita, is there any final comments you want to share with the group? Shout outs you'd like to give, resources you'd like to share, and I can pull your websites up if there's anything you want to have me pull up on screen too.
I just want to encourage people to find themselves. Honestly, I think that's really important in these times, and this has been a really interesting year. It's been a very sad year in many ways, and it's been a very rejuvenating year in many ways. And I'd like to encourage people to spend time investing in protecting themselves emotionally and psychologically, mentally, spiritually, because, there's always winter coming. There's always winter, and that's both literally and figuratively. And as much as we can care and prepare for ourselves so that winter is a time for reflection and rejuvenation and nurturing, the better. So I would encourage you to do that. And however that manifests itself for you professionally, I encourage you to do that and not just be limited by what you see around you. So that's it.
Thank you, Rita. And then Denise says it really nicely. Great energy, enthusiasm, and wisdom. There were so many great nuggets, insights, tips that you shared with us here today, Rita. Even though we had technology glitches, it was solid. Like the interview in the middle was solid. It was great. So I'll probably clip some stuff out, and I'm going to piece this thing together, and then we'll share that along. But I do want to kind of just pull I have your LinkedIn up on screen right now. I have your LinkedIn URL. Now, Rita, are you open to accepting invitations from people that are watching the broadcast, or are you a little bit more selective on that? Any advice folks on that?
LinkedIn, I'm fairly open unless, LinkedIn, I'm fairly open. It's really the only open channel that I have in social media. Everything else is pretty closed. So yes, absolutely. Okay. I'm welcome to accepting invitations.
All right, guys. Awesome. So I'm dropped the LinkedIn URL below. So I would encourage you to go to Rita's profile. She's got this really great skyline photo of Detroit. I don't know if you knew this, Rita, but I use your LinkedIn header as one of my examples in every presentation I give. And I have like a collection of like, here's an example of this. And then I have I talk about using a regional item, and yours is one of the examples of the regional. And I say, this is the picture of the city of Detroit, where Rita's from, and she focuses a lot of her work there. Yes. So I'm talking about you wherever I go, when I'm presenting, because I do think the world of you. And I just want to thank you again for being on and for having the conversation today.
Thank you. And I have to say, I am so proud of you. You have kicked some serious butt over these last years. And I watch you growing, and I'm like, oh, look at her. You and Tina. So it's just really lovely to see strong women doing what they want and what they love. So.
Oh, well, thank you. That means the world to me. And I was on the corporate, we talk about the nonlinear career success. I was on the corporate path. I was like CMO, that's where I'm going, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. And then one day I wasn't, and it wasn't by choice. Yeah. But I did make a selection on my timeline for that. And I held my head high, and I've always remained professional through the process. So this conversation was really timely for many people, myself, Tina Marie, who's watching with us today. So really great insight. So thank you so much, Rita.
You're so welcome.
All right, guys. So as we wrap here today, I just want to remind you, after you leave the video, could you step back in and click to share the video? There may be somebody in your network who can benefit from the insights that Rita shared with all of us today. And then one final thing as well, if you could please go to mellermarketing.com/subscribe. You can join my VIP email list, where you'll get notification about future guests I'll be having on my Social Media Pie interview series, as well as LinkedIn strategy tips. This has been Brenda Meller with Meller Marketing. Thank you so much for watching. If you happen to be watching this in playback, still leave us a comment below. I'll make sure to share the links with Rita so that if you do have any questions, she can see those questions and have a chance to respond. And have a wonderful rest of the week. Hopefully tech glitch free.
Right.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.